Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa Purajikacharya Ashtotar to Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Purajikacharya Ashtotar to Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavin Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. And now I hope you'll indulge me a minute, but can we move over a little bit? We shouldn't have to push the lady in the corner like that. That's not good. There's plenty of room in the whole temple. Yeah, I just, Dimitri, you come over and you sit by the, yeah, that's it. You come forward, please. Hare Krishna. I remember the days when we had almost an equal number of men and ladies than we had. Maybe not in this temple so much, but previous temples. Anyway. Now I have text 11, am I right or not? Okay. Narayanam namaskritya. Narang chaiva narottamam. Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiriye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator and commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta Prayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Oh, we got the fans blowing here? Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On his 20th day of November, 2021 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, HG Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Mark, can you move over here? Move on the side. Yeah, just give the lady a little place. Thank you. And we are reading from 5th canto, The Creative Impetus, 8th chapter, a description of the character of Bharata Maharaj. And we are in text number 11, which is prose, as many of them are. Iti kutanu sangha asana shayanatana snana asanadishu saha mrigajahuna snehanu baddha vidya asit. Iti, thus, krita anusangaha, having developed attachment, asana, sitting, shayana, lying down, atana, walking, snana, bathing, ashana adishu, while eating, and so on. Sahamriga jahuna, with the deer calf. Sneha anubadha, captivated by affection. Vidyaha, his heart. Asit, became. Okay, who can look up a verse for me? Tapas. In Bhagavad Gita. Yat sarvatrana bisneha. Just give you the number when you're done. Okay, translation. Due to attachment for the deer, Maharaj Bharata lay down with it, walked about with it, bathed with it, and even ate with it. Thus his heart became bound to the deer in affection. Text 12. Kusha kusuma samit palasha palamulo the kan ya harshyamano vikashala vrakadibhyo bhayam asham sangsamano yada saharina kunakena vanam samavishati. When Maharaj Bharata wanted to enter the forest to collect kusha grass, flowers, wood, leaves, fruits, roots, and water, he would fear that dogs, jackals, tigers, and other ferocious animals might kill the deer. He would therefore always take the deer with him when entering the forest. Purport. How Maharaj Bharata increased his affection for the deer is described herein. Even such an exalted personality as Bharata Maharaj, who had attained loving affection for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, fell down from his position due to his affection for some animal. Consequently, as will be seen, he had to accept the body of a deer in his next life. Since this was the case with Bharata Maharaj, what can we say of those who are not advanced in spiritual life, but who become attached to cats and dogs? Due to their affection for their cats and dogs, they have to take the same bodily forms in the next life, unless they clearly increase their affection and love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Unless we increase our faith in the Supreme Lord, we shall be attracted to many other things. That is the cause of our material bondage. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. Okay. Text 257, right? Yeah. Okay, the reason why I wanted him to look up this verse, because in this verse, Krishna talks about this text 257 in Bhagavad Gita, the standards of Krishna, someone who's absorbed in Krishna consciousness. And the verse goes like this: Yak sarvatra anabhisnehas tattad prapashubhashubham nabhinanta dinadveshti tasya pragya pratishtita.
In the material world, one who is unaffected by whatever good or evil he may obtain, neither praising it nor despising it, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge. Now, this word, anabhisneha, Prabhupada translates here in the word by word, says without affection. So that's also part of this verse, is that we have to avoid developing mundane affection. And mundane affection means mundane attraction and attachment to the things of this world, or the living entities of this world. And we can see that Maharaja Bharata had failed to do that. It's quite amazing. He had already risen up to the state of bhava, it's described. He had so much affection and attraction for the Lord. He was experiencing ecstasy. He was in a high state of Krishna consciousness, just short of prema. And yet, the situation came up, as we've heard, where suddenly he was confronted with this little fawn, who could not be attracted to a helpless fawn, whose mother had died, escaping from a lion, was it, or a tiger? And it was helpless. And so naturally, as any soft-hearted Vaishnava would, he took the fawn out of the lake, of the river that it had fallen into, and he protected it. And the fawn only knew him as a mother, as the protector, as the provider. And so he, as we've been reading, he established this very, very intimate and intense relationship with his fawn. There was no one else around. There was nothing else, that he had already withdrawn his affection from everything. And so this powerful affection of Maharaj Bharat, he became, what could you say, obsessed with this fawn. As much as he was focusing on Krishna, he now was focusing on the benefits of this fawn. And here we read how he was worried. Oh, if I go out alone to gather the wood and the things that I need for my worship, then the fawn will be left alone. Maybe he'll be attacked by these tigers and other animals, and so I better take him with him and protect him, you know. So in this way, he became obsessed with the fawn, and naturally, as is going to be described, he took a body of a deer. But because of his advancement, he was able to remember. Krishna gave him that blessing, as we've heard also with the Yamalarjun trees, and there's other sometimes that happens. So we'll be reading the account of how he was in life after the deer. He was taking a human birth. He took birth in a Brahmin family, and he kept himself silent. The Jada means foolish, stupid, or silent also, not speaking. So he didn't speak. But he was fully realized, as became very evident when he talked to Maharaj Rahugana. So the warning here is that we have to be careful. This is part of the lesson of this passage, this part of the pastime. And that is that as the process of Krishna consciousness is withdrawing our attention, attraction, as Prabhupada mentions here. Unless we increase our faith in the Supreme Lord, we shall be attracted to many other things. That is the cause of our material bondage. So we see all around us that as living entities, because we're part and parcel of Krishna, and Krishna's nature is to have these unlimited, wonderful, loving relationships with the pure living entities in the spiritual world, and the pure living entities here who become purified and going back to Godhead. So that's an inherent, intrinsic part of our nature, to become attracted. And indeed, if one finds himself unable to, has no, interesting use this word, no affect. There's a word affect in psychology, which is no emotion. Someone's been beaten down through circumstances, karma, whatever it is. They can't be attracted to anything. This is a psychological disease they recognize as. It's abnormal. So the nature of the living entity is to become attracted and have affection. Even we find, as Prabhupada would point out, even we find that with the animals amongst each other. So as often comes the case, when I was able to take my evening walk, and hopefully I'll be able to do it again, I'd walk up Dawes all the way to Beryl. It's a half mile. And if it was early enough, if it was still light out, you'd see so many people, they're walking their dogs. You know, they're out there with the dogs, and the dogs are pulling them, and it's stopping them, and they have to clean up after the dog. Prabhupada noticed that at one point. He says, "How, you know, it's you know, with Japan somewhere where they would started to do that." It's tragic, you know. As devotees, we can see here the human form of life is such that we can purify our heart, purify our consciousness, to the point where we can again state our normal state, which is attraction for Krishna and relationship with his living entities on the basis of that attraction. So it's not that we don't have affection for others, but it's channeled into trying to give them Krishna consciousness, to help them. If you love someone, if you have affection, you want to try to help them, right? Here, that's exactly what Maharaja Bharata did. He fed the deer, he protected the deer, all of these different things. So he had turned all of his affection that was then related to Krishna, it all became related to the deer. So this is how we fell here. This is what happens when we fall from the spiritual world. That natural attraction of the living entity for Krishna becomes absorbed in the things of this world. And it produces great fear and anxiety, because that relationship is temporary. It must be broken eventually. And that's the fact that is going to happen, and we know it's going to happen, even if we're not conscious of it all the time, creates a sense of anxiety and fear. Bhayam dvitiya banaveshita ksyat. Ishada petasya viparhiyo asmriti. And this verse by the Yogendras, some of Maharaj Bharata's brothers, describes the origin of fear, which is an inevitable concomitant of being in the material world, because it's an incompatible situation. We are spirit, not just we, but every living entity here, encased in subtle and gross matter, identifying wholly and solely with that. Certainly the lower animals identify, and animalistic human beings do too. Unless you have the proper training or the exposure or the association with devotees who can give you the clue about your real identity and what your aim in life is, then there's no question of getting free from the bonds of material nature. There may be different varieties in the course of everyone's life. These affections are redirected. You're growing up, you have your mother and father and your siblings. Prabhupada describes this in the preface to the Nectar of Devotion, a very wonderful chapter. He talks about love, how love can expand, and we don't know where it ends until we come to Krishna consciousness. It ends in Krishna. So it's transferred. As you can look back on your life, you had great affection for your siblings, say, or for someone of the opposite sex. Certainly for your parents when you grow up, if it's a normal family. And as you grow up, it wanes. You still have respect and some affection, but it's not the same. And then it's retransferred to someone else or something else, and these pets, whatever. So this is the art and science of Krishna consciousness, is understanding this and then systematically redirecting our attraction and affection for the things of this world and people of this world and living entities of this world to Krishna and Krishna's associates, Krishna's devotees, and like that. And then what's our relationship with other living entities of this world? We want to try to help them. A beautiful verse, again by the Yogendras, different Yogendra, the different levels of the devotees. The Maharaja, he sees everything in Krishna and Krishna in everything. He sees everyone serving Krishna except himself. So why preach? So Prabhupada said to come down to the Majjhima Adhikari level in order to have the preach. Why? Because in Majjhima Adhikari you make distinctions. Ishare tad arineshu baliseshu dusachasha prema maitri kripopeksha yakaroti samajjhima. So there's four, here it says you have four different categories of beings who we relate to differently. Ishvara, to the Lord, we try to develop prema, love. To the other devotees, those related to the Lord, we try to have nice, loving relationships, affection, like that. To the innocent, who are simply confused, they don't know, they're not arch enemies of the Lord, they're not, We have kripa. We try to give mercy by giving them a book, giving them their first connection to Krishna consciousness, bringing them back to Krishna consciousness. And to the envious demons, arch enemies of God and His devotees, we ignore them. We avoid them. Try to avoid them. So this is the platform on which the Sankirtan movement goes on and the preaching movement goes on. You feel the urgency, because it's not that your affection is lost for all these living entities, but it's channeled into karuna, into compassion for them, to try to give them Krishna so that they can wake up and introduce them to their real eternal lover, Krishna. That's it. Rather than you identifying with, your body and their body and deepening the illusion. So it's a razor's edge. That's in the Shastra. As we progress in our devotional service, we still have so many of our materialistic tendencies are still there. Hopefully they're waning and we're putting in the background. But if we're not careful and we are in our association and how we associate with, let's say, living entities who could draw our affection, then we can be bewildered and think that, oh, this is just preaching, but actually it's developing some material affection, you see. And so, therefore, there's so many rules and regulations about association with the opposite sex, and those have to be followed very carefully. Otherwise, and we've seen, it's a dangerous situation. We're in the material world, we're not completely cured. Prabhupada gave the example of someone who's recovering from a disease. We have to be very careful not to, again, associate with those who are sick, so we can have a relapse. The word relapse he would use, which is exactly what happened. Being in material life is a form of disease. Bhava roga is some kind called. Also, kama is called a roga, is a disease. So that means that we're infected, life after life. We're infected with this illusory conception of self, with this forgetfulness of Krishna, with all of these attractions and repulsions, because there's also the opposite side of material consciousness. And when our mind is filled with that, when we leave the body, then we take another body that's we'll be able to continue that. This is the science of transmigration. And especially if we're leaving from a human body, there's also the karma that has to be suffered or enjoyed. But with either one, keeps us bound to this world. So it's a huge entanglement. We've got ourselves into a fix here, But we've been given the means to get out. But it takes vigilance. This idea of always paying attention to what's happening, what are you doing with your mind and senses and your intelligence, so that you can stay on the safe side. And Prabhupada said the safest place in the world is the Sankirtan, is a Harinam party. And I missed it. I was just in this wonderful kirtan by Ramapati Prabhu. I was saying, oh boy, I've really been missing it because I haven't been able to come over, And I was also noticing the healing power of dancing in kirtan. I was actually walking a little bit and I was saying, well, it stopped hurting, Hare Krishna. Maybe that's the therapy I've been missing in this. But it's good to be back in the association of devotees and try to come more often. I think I'll be able to. So that's what's the lesson here that we've been getting. Because it's a very powerful force, this attraction, love makes the world go round, so to speak, and really that's you can see it, how the family attraction or attraction to things of the senses that are inanimate can be such a binding force. And that's tragic. I remember back in the 80s where the cocaine thing came on, and suddenly that was everywhere. And there was this crack epidemic in inner cities, cheaper cocaine. And I was just aware of it. Sometimes news came to me of it. And it was described how people get into this crack cocaine, and it's so addictive and that they forget to take care of their children. A mother will forget to take this most powerful bond, is broken. It's just like horrific, demonic force. It's a powerful attraction that kills this other attraction. That's also so powerful. So this is a we should be aware of that and understand part of this pastime is a warning to us, clearly. This tremendously exalted soul who we're reading about how he so wonderfully guided the kingdom, 10 million years, yeah, but then it says at a young age, I don't know how long he was living, he left his family, exactly. Surad Raja Riddhisprasha, he said, even in his youth, and Riddhisprasha, the heart is so much touched, his youth, he'd got his family and everything, young wife, and yet he left it for the forest, for Pulaha Ashram, to practice detachment, to break those bonds of affection and redirect it to Krishna. So he did all of this, and yet he was inattentive, he fell into this trap, and so it postponed his going back to Godhead. So it's an important lesson for us. Sometimes it's difficult. I was thinking of this verse that Kapila Dev speaks in the 25th chapter of the 3rd canto, speaking to his mother. And he's speaking about the characteristics of a sadhu. And Prabhupada makes it very clear, when he would come across that word, he would often quote this verse, Apichet Sodharacharo Bhajate Mam Ananya Bhak Sadareva Samantabhyak. That second line and third line, Bhajate Mam Ananya Bhak, one who is, Krishna is saying, one who is worshipping me without deviation, pure devotee, that's what a sadhu really is. And what does Prahlad say? What does Kapila Dev say? Tatikshava, Karunika, Suridak Sarvadehina, Majata Shatravak Shanta, Saravak Sarubhushana. So he's actually, this whole Sadhu Sangashtaka, beginning in the previous verse, he's describing exactly what we're reading about here. How the powerful attachments that we have in this world, which keep us bound here, have to be directed toward Krishna. But they can't be directed directly to Krishna. First have to be directed to the sadhu, to the devotee, the pure devotee. And then that can be channeled. So then he's describing the qualities, this famous verse, tolerance, compassion for all living entities, no enmity toward anyone, and therefore very peaceful in all these qualities. But doesn't he mention there? Being a devotee. That's in the next verse. And it's pertinent to this. Mai ananyena bhavena bhaktim kurvanti yedvidham. Ananyena bhavena means without deviation, pure devotee, one who's rendering devotional service to me, Kapila Dev speaking, is Krishna. Bhaktim kurvanti yedvidham, and the very firm determination. Why do you need determination? Because there's all these distractions, both from within and without. And so you need determination and patience and enthusiasm. And then he says, Matkrute chakta karmanas chakta swajana bandhava. Matkrute chakta karmanas, for my sake, they'll give up any activity that is detrimental to bhakti. That's part of surrender, right? And if there are impediments, he'll also give up the association and attraction for his family members and friends. Matkrite tyakta swajana bandhava. So we've seen, this is a process of sannyas as it's given. Srila Prabhupada showed himself. He separated from his family at a certain point, vanaprastha, and then he took sannyas. And he would, I like to listen to those old lectures from New York, And he says, yes, I still have my wife, and my children are still there, grown-up children, But I've come to this state of, detachment, because it's a very powerful force. There's no question about it. And if we're not careful, the seeds can rise up again until we attain the stage of prema bhakti, which is there's always that danger. So we should be very careful. And the chanting of the holy name is directly helping us to become attracted to Krishna, obviously. I memorized one verse that I wanted to memorize for a long time. I don't know if I'll give you the Sanskrit here, but it describes what the actual meaning of each syllable in the word Krishna is. What is it? Krishna? I forget the Sanskrit, but it says Krish is the all-attractive nature of Krishna, of God, of the absolute truth. And Na is the bliss, the ananda, the pleasure that comes from serving. So therefore, Krishna is the Param Brahma, is the Supreme Absolute Truth. So that means, because the name Krishna is not different from Krishna, that if we chant nicely and hear with attention and with purity, and that means that, following the principles of, regular principles obviously, but also all the other things we've been given, one of the fruits of that is the ability and the attraction to the holy name, so that we're absorbed in hearing that sound. The sound itself is Krishna, and has that potency to attract us away from these attractions, and to give us the bliss and real happiness of love for Krishna and those things related to Krishna. So the holy name, oh, by the way, I wanted to advertise a little bit, not for anything I'm doing, but there's this wonderful series, some of you may be familiar with, I think we used to show some of them, called Following Srila Prabhupada. And I was checking out some of the first ones about, the earliest movies of Prabhupada back in early '66, before he even had 26th Avenue. There's one at the retreat of Dr. Mishra. And it goes on. And it's just mesmerizing. The early devotees, and you see, and some of their remembrances of Prabhupada. And they had a play in Botanical Garden, and they dressed up as Radha and Krishna, and at first Prabhupada was very angry. What are they doing? Because they were worshiping Radha, this Radha and Krishna actors. I said, it can't be done. But then when he came, you see Prabhupada, and they're out in the Botanical Garden. Prabhupada is there, and right next to him is the devotee, some young girl actually, who was dressed up as Krishna, and and Prabhupada, he softened when they see their enthusiasm. He said, "Oh, this is very good that you went and did this play. It means you're absorbed in thinking of Krishna." Anyway, it's available on YouTube. All of them are available on YouTube. They're all narrated by devotees who were there, and they're giving it what's going on and so forth. So I recommend it if you have some time. It's a wonderful way of getting enlivened. And I was thinking, as I was watching one last night, how actually this morning when I was attending Guru Puja, Shri Guru Charanarati Aise Uttamagati, right? Is that attraction for the lotus feet of the spiritual master, affection, rati, is the best way of advancement. They say uttamagati, meaning the best way of advancement in devotional service. Now, why is that? Well, you can see from these early days and present days, because once there is some affection there and some respect, of course, Prabhupada, faith and affection, all in proper way, then the impetus to serve becomes very natural. Just like this Maharaja Bharata, he had a great affection, so he wanted to serve this deer. He wanted to protect it and feed it and take prasadam with it and everything, right? So that affection is a great impetus to service. And that's what was moving the whole movement in the early days. There were no books. I mean, they had that one set of books, but there wasn't like we have a tremendous, association with Prabhupada in that way. But Prabhupada was giving himself so widely, and devotees just loved him. And they were, and once you start chanting and you see these kirtans, the airport, before the craziness with, 9/11, and everything shut down, and TSA. You go into there and they'd have these huge kirtans in the airport, welcoming Prabhupada, and people were amazed, what's going on, So that, it's very, you may find it, check it out. I'm just encouraging you to check it out. All right, any discussion on these points? Maharaj? Mike.
Oh, okay. Hare Krishna. If Bharat Maharaj, almost on the edge of prema, became attached to a deer, then what's our hope? I might as well just cash in my chips now. Why make this effort? Because, if he can't got swayed, what's my hope?
Well, thank you for it. That's the good. Clear. What I would say is that I would recall that pastime of Prabhupada's where someone noticed he was praying ardently in front of the deities. Prabhupada, what are you praying for? Oh yeah, were you there? Oh, yeah. You know it better than me. So, who asked him? Do you know? It doesn't matter, I guess. Govardhan himself, the president actually asked Prabhupada, what are you praying for? You know, it's a very interesting question. Prabhupada said, surprisingly, I'm praying that I don't fall down. I said, how can you fall down? You're a pure devotee. He said, that's why I can't fall down, because I'm always praying. So, as you point out, there's a tremendous difference. There's a gap between Bharata Maharaj and ourselves. We're, sons and daughters of Kali Yuga, where it's an ocean of faults, and which are listed very nicely in the 12th canto, and we can all see, yeah, that's me, that's me, that's me. And so what's our hope? The hope is that Krishna sees how disqualified we are, and he has come as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to give us this powerful, powerful method of advancement and protection, which is the holy name, the chanting of the holy name. Kaladosha nideraja nastayoke mahadguna kirtanadeva Krishna sa mukta sangha param bhajet. Notice that word mukta sangha, which means exactly become free from all the attachments and attractions of this world, and go param bhajet. So this Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults. None of us are unaware of them. We can probably just review our own lives. But there's one very special quality in this age. And that is that just by chanting the holy name, one can be free of all these attachments and go to the spiritual world. So we're given that benediction, that because we're so unqualified and helpless, we can chant from the bottom of our hearts in a helpless condition. You know, if you're living in Satya Yuga, 100,000 years, everybody's a Brahmin. You know, let's do a little meditation for maybe 150 years or maybe 10,000 years. Then it's not so easy to pray, feel as if you're completely helpless and hopeless. You know, so therefore it says in the Bhagavatam, Kaling sabhaji antyaya guna gyasara bhaginaha yatra sankirtane naiva sarva sarto bilabhyate. That those who are intelligent, they worship this Kali Yuga, because in this Kali Yuga especially, who are Aryans, who know the essence of things, guna gyasara bhaginaha. Hare Krishna. They understand what's what. They worship this Kali Yuga because just in this Kali Yuga, just by Sankirtan, congregational chanting, one can achieve all one's svarta. All these words are important. Sva-arta, one's actual goal, the goal of the soul. Not all of these external artas, money and wealth and power, that's not it. It's the goal of the soul, which is to awaken one's love for Krishna and return back to God. So that's our only hope, chanting the holy name purely. And we've been given the facility, but we have to follow the program strictly. And we can also become advanced and protected. But as we've seen, Kali Yuga is very powerful. And if you offend devotees and offend the holy name, then you're helpless. You can easily be swept away. So we should stay on that boat. We don't want to be swept off the boat of ISKCON. Hare Krishna. Any other question or comment? No. Bhakti Daniel, our budding scholar there, author. You got all those notes.
A simple question of just understanding, like, what counts as devotional service? Like
That's the question?
Yeah, just what counts as devotional service?
Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam. You want me to list the 9 processes?
No, because like sometimes we can do things and like you said, like even just cleaning the floor of the temple room, it's like devotional service, right?
For sure.
But what if we're cleaning the floor like out in the streets and then picking up trash or something? Does that count as devotional service? Like what?
The easy answer is that which is authorized, which is something that is that you've been is based in the books or from your authorities, In other words, to clean Krishna's floor is almost universally, devotional service. But if some crazy person comes in here and throws out, a whole bunch of toxic bleach and something and starts wiping the floor madly, that's not devotional service. You know what I'm saying? In other words, we should take our cue from the books, from our authorities. You know, Prabhupada is given, like Maharaj can probably tell me better than I. I've heard the history. L.A., 1970, right? It was before the Mangalartik. Wasn't there a period there was no Mangalartik? You get up at 7, stay out till 12 doing Harinam. That was devotional service. That was authorized, you know. But now I don't think, you know, we would want anyone to stay out till 12 and, you know, Harinam. And
it wasn't working so well also,
yeah. It's good. And so it evolved. But at that time, you know, if you were just following the program and doing, but today it changed. In other words, we learn new things about, you know, what's the proper devotional service. And as you progress in devotional service, you get initiated, you get a Brahman initiation. Then part of your service is to go on the altar, and you know, so it changes over time. But it's the safest thing is to, as I say, become well versed in the Shastra and understand. But at the same time, work under an authority and make a schedule. Where am I supposed to be at what time? And then there's the quality of your service, how you're applying your conscience to it and doing it for Krishna and all of these different things. The mental culture of Krishna consciousness. So there's all that, and that you'll always be on the safe side, you know. Especially if, you know, you get into that you realize your first service of the day is to attend Mangalartik. But that means, you know, in good consciousness, you want to give enough sleep, you definitely want to be bathed, all of these different things. And that sets up the whole day. You hear, you know, this nice morning program Prabhupada set up, full of the 5 most essential devotional service, chanting the holy name, association with devotees, hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam with ardent hearing, with proper attention, living in a holy place, and worshiping the deities with devotion. Now, you know, only a few of us can go on the altar, you know, but coming before the deity, coming on time, greeting the deities, chanting before the deities, praying, you can pray, you know, take some of the author, if you're interested in Sanskrit prayers, I have unlimited prayers I can teach you, you know. That's all deity worship. So you can perform all 5 of those, and that constitutes this morning program. Prabhupada so ingeniously arranged it that way. And Rupa Goswami says even a little advancement in any of these can, you know, take you back to Godhead. So that's your prescription, the short answer. Anyone else? Nice to see you, Sinai. She's been making these garlands for how long? 10, 15 years? A long time. Thank you very much. Okay. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.